Hey everybody, welcome to PC Perspective. I'm Ryan Shrout here with Ken Addison with 2Ds, and we're going to talk about what we did today. We spent actually 4 hours with Oculus at what they called their Oculus Game Day 2016. They invited us out. Basically, we showed up. We had kind of a set schedule of games that we were able to see. Interestingly, they had a list here. I think this is what they say, like 35 games or something like that. A significant amount of which are going to be launch day games that are available on March 28th when people start receiving their Oculus Rift headsets. Then one in April and some that are unannounced or just kind of spring or launch time frame is what they're calling
launch window.
Launch window games, yeah, as they will. So we didn't get to see all of these, obviously. We got to see maybe 7 or 8. And Ken and I had to alternate back and forth, but we figured we'd give you a little bit of overview of what we saw and kind of what our experiences were. Up first, we saw Adrift.
With a 1, not an I.
Yeah, ADR1 FT.
It's important.
I don't know. I'm sure there's some story element in there that comes into it. So I saw this at CES. You saw this today.
Yes.
It is a first-person space survival game.
Have you ever seen the movie Gravity?
I haven't, but I've seen trailers.
Neither have I. But I'm
good.
pretty sure that's kind of what they're going for here.
It's very similar type of...
There's like a space, you're on like a International Space Station type thing, and it explodes, and you're left drifting in space, and you have to like collect oxygen canisters, and there are other things you will eventually have to do that weren't real. They're just showing off like the first 15 minutes of the game, really.
Yeah, we only got 30 minutes with each session, and then we had like pre-talk, post-talk, so there was not a huge amount of gameplay in some of these instances. This is all the games, most of the games we'll talk about had, you were using the Oculus headset, you were playing with a controller, an Xbox One controller. What did you think about just like maybe the visuals and then how the control scheme worked? Did it seem to work okay with you?
Yeah, the controller seemed to work okay. I know when you try to drift, you had some problems because it's one of the games where you can move your head to look around, and you can also, then you use the stick to move the camera, use the right stick to move the camera, and that can be a bit disorienting. But I didn't find it to be much of a problem because the look around ability in the helmet was very small. You only had a couple of degrees of actually looking around before there would be the edges of the helmet.
Oh, okay.
So I mainly just looked forward and used the camera controls the entire time.
Okay.
So it actually worked pretty well. It's a good-looking game. It really is. It's one of the better examples of like a modern 3D title that we've seen.
Yeah.
Not like a cel-shaded.
It's built on UE4.
Yeah.
I agree. Like I had they might have changed it since CES, where maybe I thought I had more head motion. Right. The ability, basically, you're using propellant to move forward.
Yeah.
Right. And then you change your direction based on either the way you look or the control stick. Right. And having two methods of controlling your direction seems to be a thing that gets me. We did talk to them. They were one of the few that had some interesting stuff to say about like, okay, this is UE4 game. Are there going to be in-game settings? Like, how is all this changing? And they said this game will be released as a non-VR title, and it will have like your typical PC-based visual quality settings that you can adjust, textures, shadowing, etc. But in the current setup they have, as it's going to launch, it will not have those settings in the VR edition. And talked to their CTO, who said essentially like this was a kind of a decision that they had made at the time. They're thinking about maybe going back or forth on it, but the idea is. Because you can't go below 90 and you don't want to screw up the experience that people have with this game to induce nausea or any kind of uncomfortable like sensations, they kind of wanted to set that minimum for like the recommended specs. So GTX 970, R9 290, like those were the settings are kind of tuned at. So it'll be interesting to see as these games are released which ones have support for that and don't. What was the second game we went up to see?
It was Dragonfront. This is the one you played.
Oh, Dragonfront is it's kind of like...
It's a TCG.
Yeah, it's a card game. Kind of reminds you, if you've played Hearthstone, you have an idea of what the goals here are. The board is set up a little differently. There's kind of like rows, and that's the only way they attack back and forth. You still have spells, you're earning mana, you're placing cards. So it's a collectible card game, if you will, and it seemed like a fun game. Again, I only got to play one round for 15 or 20 minutes, so it's hard to get an idea.
Multiplayer though, it's the only multiplayer experience we had.
Yeah, so far, yeah. I was playing against the game's creator, and I won. I will put it out there.
I think he might have been taking it easy.
Maybe. But the idea is like you were kind of this disembodied head above the board on your side, and you can kind of look around. It's all in 3D, and your cursor is where you're looking, right? So you look up at your deck of cards, kind of up in the sky-ish area, hit A on the controller to select it. You look down at the board, hit A where you want to drop it. When you want to move a guy forward, you hit A, select that way. And it looked neat.
Yeah, the character animations were pretty cool when you spawned someone in, and they like came up from the board, and
It could have very easily been a game that wasn't in VR, though.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah,
The VR element is more of a kind of an add-on for it. I don't think this game is coming out not in VR.
yeah, no,
I don't remember for sure. But it was interesting, but it wasn't kind of a breathtaking demo. It was pretty, but I will also say one of the things that kind of, because a lot of the stuff is standing still, any of the screen door effect or visual artifacts that happen, like they're more apparent because you're just staring at one item for a long period of time. So it kind of stood out a little bit that way. But it was still interesting. It might be fun. I want to see if that's on here. What was it? Let's see. That is a free-to-play game available in the spring. So it is free to play. So it's a good move for it. The third game I went to go see was Damaged Core. I played this one as well.
Yeah.
This is their take on, and now I'm blanking on the developer. I wish they'd put the developer on our list here. They don't even have it on here. Damaged Core is a spring game as well. It's a first-person shooter in VR, but you aren't moving forward back and forth. You're basically doing the teleport trick that we've seen in several VR games, right? So when you want to, you are a entity based entirely out of code, and you jump from robot to robot, right? So all of the robots, or most of the robots, are enemies, and you take over their body. Then you shoot with their weapons. You have access to their capabilities, and then when that robot dies, when its systems start to shut down, you have a certain time limit to find another robot to jump to before your game is over, essentially.
And that's sort of how they did class-based combat, because you would switch into a different robot and it would have a different weapon, like a shotgun versus sniper versus an assault rifle.
Yeah,
and then some like special boss character type thing.
A ship showed up at the end that you could take over as well, and it was actually really cool. Like, so it's, they give you a little tutorial you walk through, maybe 10 minutes. You can pull the left trigger in to get a scope, right trigger to shoot him in the head, kills him in one shot, that type of thing. And the whole idea is, so you don't have locomotion, you're basically teleporting back and forth. And they were explaining how different people play it different ways. Some people like to choose, and apparently this is more what I did, choose a robot kind of far out in the distance, and so you can like shoot people from a distance for a longer period of time until that body is disintegrating and you teleport into another one. Other people seem to jump from person to person to person very quickly. You jump into a guy with a shotgun, you shoot two people, you're immediately shot, you have a certain amount of time to jump into another one, shoot a couple of more robots that way. It was actually pretty cool. I didn't quite finish the first level in it. I died a few times at the end.
They did say only 4 people all week I finished the first level.
Well, I got pretty close. But it actually seemed pretty fun. It was actually engaging. It was one of the few games where you were rotating 360 degrees in it, which could be a problem, obviously, with the cord. But it had some interesting things. They talked about image quality settings being available in it. Some other interesting tricks that they had to figure out, like when you transport into another robot's body, you don't automatically you're not automatically looking at the direction that robot was looking. They kind of reset you to look at the thing, like your objective, the thing you're supposed to be looking at, either the major boss or the target that you're supposed to be shooting, those types of things. So they're doing some tricks to try to help you reset, so you're not constantly flipping around and stuff, which is a really good idea. But I actually like that one a lot. I'm looking forward to trying that, I guess, in the spring. No pricing announced on that one. After that, you tried Chronos.
Yes.
Which is a third-person action-adventure game. That one is a
action RPG.
Action RPG. It's a launch game. It's going to be $49.99, and I really liked its kind of design philosophy.
Yeah, so essentially it was a fixed camera. Each scene you'd walk into had a fixed camera. It's kind of reminded me sort of like a Eco Shadow of the Colossus.
Resident Evil.
There you go.
Was a perfect example of when you went into a scene, a room or a section of a room, the camera location was fixed, and then you move the character inside of it.
Although you could, since you were the camera technically, with the headset on, you could look around any way you wanted, and there were cool scenes where you could like look up and look down.
like look down through a chasm or up through a shaft or something like that.
Which is really
even
cool.
though your character wasn't necessarily in that direct area.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So your character may be a little bit off to the left on a pathway that kind of goes on an overhang or a bridge or something, but the camera is placed so that you could look up and see what's up and below the bridge, for example.
And towards the end of the demo, they started playing with that. So like if you look around a corner before your character went by, you could see an enemy that you could choose to surprise, engage, or wait for them to come out and engage in that way.
Again, we had a short demo. Anything interesting on the storytelling side of it, or graphically, it was pretty.
It was.
He did talk about it was built in the Unreal Engine as well. That they actually had to reduce some of the destructibility of items because they had to hit 90 frames per second with the GTX 970 or 9290. So they talked about having to limit some of those things in order to make the VR experience better. And I think this is a game that's only going to be on VR.
Yeah, I don't think it would be much fun in 2D. I think having the whole 3D VR thing and the visual element really made that work.
So it's kind of an action RPG. You're doing hand-to-hand combat. Looks like there's some magic stuff in there as well. Getting potions,
looks like
getting
different
healing
classes, sort of thing.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. I didn't try that one, but I do think that one's going to be pretty neat.
Yeah.
And then I tried the Climb.
Well, we tried the lunch, and we did something during lunch that we should probably talk about.
Oh, yeah. During lunch, we went and made the Project Cars developer, who's kind of, I guess he said he was a project lead on it.
I think so, yeah.
And Josh will be really excited to hear this. We got to talk to him, exchange business cards, and they had Project Cars running on the Rift with a controller, not a steering wheel. They wanted to show what you were going to get out of the box on March 28th. And this patch will be available on March 28th, the version that will support...
the build will be date with Oculus.
And it was pretty cool. Like, I am the person who doesn't want to drive in cockpit in racing games.
Yeah.
But it was very unique, I think, this way.
It's the only way I want to play that game anymore. I want to play it.
It's unfortunate.
I want to play it in a VR headset with a steering wheel and pedals in a racing seat. That's the only way I want to play that game anymore.
It was just cool to be able to like glance up at your rear view mirror, your side view mirror. You could lean forward and look at your instrument cluster if you wanted to see the temperatures of things.
And then I wrecked.
Yeah, you did do that.
It just felt right because we're used to driving cars. It just instantly felt like the exact place you should be. It felt like I was in that Ford Focus.
When it started raining, it felt real, right? Because the rain was hitting the windshield. It's all 3D. There's a couple things, and he was very upfront about, like the mirrors are flat screens. They don't also employ like the 3D aspect of it. It's something that they're hoping to add into the next iteration of the game.
Yeah, and that wasn't a big deal. The first time you glance up at the rear view, you could tell, but after that, it was a mostly seamless transition.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then he even had me stop and like if you stand up, I was sitting down and you kind of reset your kind of baseline. Yeah. And then when you stand up, you're actually like you just kind of get out of the car,
just kind of move the camera
walk through
up.
it, and you can like look around your car and see the damage on the outside of it. I looked back at myself and saw him disembodied. Like there's a headless driver with his hands on the steering wheel. It was kind of funny that he pointed out. It was pretty neat, and it's clear like that is. They list it as an intense experience on the comfort level, but I don't really agree with that. Like it seemed more like, hey, if you've driven a car before, this is exactly how you would expect it to feel.
And if you take that and the level of simulation that Project Cars does with, let's say, even like a $1,000 Fantex wheel and an Oculus Rift, you're getting up there, but it's like driving a race car. You could simulate the Nürburgring perfectly.
I also want to point this out. I said when I first talked to him, it's like this is a pretty straightforward thing, right? You just kind of add in 3D and add in the camera stuff for the headset, and you're good. And he's like, no, actually, we couldn't do that because in the 2D version of Project Cars, they put in a lot of little cues to let you try to get the character to feel, the driver to feel like they are moving. So like when you take a corner, they might subtly shift the camera to the left, like you're experiencing G-forces, right? Or when you're braking or accelerating, they might move the camera subtly either way. And in VR, that would make you nauseous. So it would give you motion sickness because your body is not experiencing those things that it's supposed to be seeing. So they had to like tone those down. There's still some of that type of stuff in there, but they had to tone it down and tweak it a whole bunch to get it to really work well in VR. So I was impressed. It was pretty cool. Now we'll get to the Climb. This is Where is that one on this list? Here it is, moderate, $49.99, full game, available in April. That's what they say. This is kind of, was built off of the tech demo that they showed a long time ago, that Crytek showed, of like the Dragon Island where you're climbing up. The idea,
I think, but yeah.
Yeah, dinosaurs, not dragons. The idea is your left and right triggers basically control hands that are climbing up mountains, like you're doing rock climbing essentially. And then there's some mechanics in there for like, if you're only holding by one hand, there's a timer of sorts. There's like a what would you call it? A stamina meter that decreases.
Yeah, grip meter.
A grip meter that decreases. And if you hold on to it too long, you'll fall. If you have two hands, that recharges. Yeah. You chalk your hands up so that the recharge rate lasts longer. Things like that. But the mechanic of actually playing the game is kind of looking. Holding the trigger means your hand is holding onto the grip. Letting go of it means that hand is free, and you can look for the next place to put your hand up, right? And then
or
you
fall.
move the next one, or fall, right? There's a button to like jump, and then you have to grab at the right time. It was pretty neat, and you definitely got a feeling of verticality as you were ascending, right? And you make it up to like the end of stage one or part one of stage one, where you would hit like a platform and you could look around and you continue on. I don't know how long I'd be able to play that game.
Yeah.
I'd have to see what else the game was going to introduce in terms of mechanics or different grip styles or something like that to make it interesting and engaging for me to continue going beyond a demo. Of it, but they seem to believe that they can do it. They're charging full price for it, like it's going to be a full release game.
Yeah, we'll see.
And I can't help but thinking that this would be a game that is better with the touch controls, right? Because you actually reach up for something and hold on, and then as you move your arm down, like. You do that, but that could just be more effort than is necessary.
Yeah, going like this for a half hour might not be might not be very fun.
Yeah. And then we ended on Lucky's Tale, which is a pack-in game. Every Oculus Rift that ships will come with Lucky's Tale. It's a 3D platformer, Mario-ish type,
Yeah, he said they're
cutesy
going
character.
for Mario 64, Crash Bandicoot. It actually reminded me a lot of the first Jack and Daxter on PS2.
Okay. This is interesting. This is a third-person action game.
Yes.
Right. That has VR, right? And you're essentially the camera that follows the character normally. That is what your head is.
Yes.
So you can kind of look around at
But
anything.
instead of being fixed like in Chronos, it moved.
Right.
It was sort
It
of
moved with the character.
Yeah, it was a pre-programmed path that the camera moved upon, where you could look around, but it still kind of followed the character as you scrolled across. Right. Well, in any of the directions, because it's 3D, so it could go left to right or in or in any sort of direction there.
Yeah. And it's cutesy characters. It's collecting coins. It's butt stomping things. It's tail swiping things. It will probably be a very good pack-in, like an introduction to people for 3D and VR in general. Again, they talked about some of the technical issues of like always trying to go into the screen and only very few times and subtly like moving to the left or right, never going backwards.
Yeah, apparently going backwards is a big thing you don't do, we've heard today.
This was another game, much like Adrift when I tried at CES, where for some reason it didn't really trigger me, but there was a couple of moments where, I would be moving and the camera would be moving at the same time. Like my head would be moving and then the camera would be moving in the 3D space, and it would maybe that's not the perfect way for me to do it. But you said you didn't really have any issues with it,
No, I didn't have
right?
any issues. It was sort of kind of like Adrift, using my head to, well, actually it was the opposite of Drift. I was using my head as the look stick instead of the look stick.
Yeah.
So it was just sort of taking that two joystick platformer thing and moving it to head motion, and then
So it's like one stick with head motion. Okay. So like I said, it's a cute little kind of platformer game.
I want to play through that. I like 3D platformers. It was pretty fun.
And then that was the end of our scheduled stuff, but we also
Snuck in.
We were snuck in to play Job Simulator. And
Cue the B-roll.
yeah, the Job Simulator is it's like somewhere in the future where nobody has to work anymore, and humans put on these VR headsets and they go simulate jobs just so
what
they
it
have
was
something
like
to
back
do.
in the day.
Right, what it was
Which
like
is
to have
our
a day.
day. Our day.
So
Anachronistic. But
the scenario that Ken and I tried out was as a quick order chef, right?
Yeah.
So you're making sandwiches, or you're cooking tea, making tea, or you're grilling steaks or something like that.
Sounds like the least exciting
It
thing
sounds
in the world.
but it's hilarious. It's funny. This is the only one demo we used that used the touch controllers.
Yes.
And it was awesome with it. Like you're stationary. It's a very small kitchen.
Yeah.
Right? You've got your stove type thing here. You basically can take a step in either direction. That's kind of like the limit of the space you need to use. There's like a refrigerator and a pantry. And like I'm saying, I think one thing you made is you had to make a juice of some kind, right? And
Yeah.
you put in like carrots and a tomato and then like eggs or cheese or something, right? And like these orders come in on a ticket. You look at it, you just kind of throw it off to the side. They give you directions on what to make. When you're done, you plate it, you put it off to the side,
Yeah.
you ring a bell. And it's really just a joke. Like it's like just funny.
If you've ever played Surgeon Simulator, it's definitely in that vein. It's certainly more controllable than Surgeon.
Right.
Like that isn't the obstacle.
Right.
Really, you're not fighting the controls the entire time, but it's doing stupid shit.
It's like, okay, you make a steak. It's like I had to make a sandwich, right?
Yeah.
And so you pull the switch so the sandwich maker part comes up, and then like you can put anything you want on the sandwich. So I put a whole tomato on it, and then I put a raw steak on it, and then I put a whole block of cheese on it. I put a top bread on it. Boom, sent it out. Everybody, I passed that specific level. So it's not like it's not a difficult game. It's not trying to be difficult. It's supposed to demonstrate the awesomeness of using these controllers, because when I reach over here and grab a cup with which to pour juice into, or I put it under the sink and reach with my other hand to turn on the water, it just fills up.
Yeah.
And then I can leave it on running, and then I can take that water and throw it at the robot across the thing if I want to do that.
And this is probably a bit planned, probably a bit the tech. It felt like 90% good, and then like the last 10% was jank, but it was like a really fun jank.
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was. I agree.
Like, I tried to put that cup down and it sort of clipped through a bit.
Right.
But it was funny.
Yeah. They're going to have, so it's like, I think they're going to launch with four
scenarios.
different scenarios, and I think as of today they're announcing like the fourth one is the car mechanic stuff, and it looked pretty funny. So I don't know. This one is listed as not announced. It will require the touch controller, so obviously for Oculus at least, that will have to wait until the touch controller ship. For the HTC Vive, it will probably be available immediately. I think it's a pack-in.
It's pack-in for the
and there might be a pack-in. So we'll get our chance to play around with it. But it was a lot of fun. It wasn't like, oh my God, I wish this gaming experience existed in other places. But it was like, this is what you put, like, when I bring Kelly in to try a VR headset for the first time, this is what I'm going to have her do, right? Because it'll be fun, and it will be
She's gonna think that's so stupid.
interaction. Oh, I know. I fully expect that.
And it's good. We'll have a good comparison point between the Vive controllers and the touch controllers, since we've used it on Oculus now.
Yeah, and very recently.
Vive, so it'll be an interesting data point there.
Yeah, so that was kind of what we did in our 4 hours with the Oculus. There's some other stuff on here. I heard good things from Ryan Smith at Anantech about I Expect You to Die. They had Rock Band VR there. I wanted to try the Eagle Flight, which was the new game
from Ubisoft.
Yeah, that AMD showed. So maybe we'll get a chance to try that over at the show. So that's kind of what we did with Oculus.
I should have pre-ordered a headset.
I pre-ordered. I'm gonna have one.
Like I was thinking that all morning. Like, man, I really want one of these now. This is awesome.
It's pretty cool. I'm excited. I'm excited to spend more than 30 minutes with any one game as well. Like, that's another thing. It's like, how comfortable is this going to be able to wear for an hour, 2 hours at a time? And I think a lot of that will all be made very obvious come April. Right? Yeah. Once we've all had some time with it. So
it'll be an interesting couple months.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you stay tuned at PCPro.com. We'll have a lot more on the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive coming up soon. We'll have our VR builds posted for you guys starting next week. So if you're looking into some of these gaming experiences, you want to build a PC for it, we'll have the information you need for that. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
See you.